So I have to talk about this dream with you guys. I mean, it just blew my mind. I knew it was a spiritual dream because, you know, I've had so many of those. Sometimes it's a demonic attack, and then other times, you know, God is trying to reveal something or give a warning about something, or even just teach a lesson or encourage. And if you guys remember the dream I had a couple months ago, I was just in tears as I told you guys about it in the video, because it was just so beautiful and wonderful and encouraging. And it was just mind-blowing how the Bible backed up, you know, what I was seeing in the dream. And so with this particular dream, it was different. It was violent and very graphic. And I woke up and I was disturbed, and I just began to pray. I said, you know, Lord, what was that all about? And there was like 4 different parts of the dream. And the part that blew my mind the most is when I began to pray about it and God told me what it meant. I was like, wow, like how the different pieces that had nothing to do with each other all came together. I said, man, I have to share this with my brothers and sisters. You might, you know, hear yourself in this dream. And so I'm gonna start at this particular part. I'm not going in any particular order, but it was like I saw Jesus and there was a bunch of people. I mean, there was just multitudes of people, and he had some people come with him on the water, and they were walking across the water. And then he told other people very kindly and very gently, he said, you know, wait, just stop, don't come just yet. And so I saw this guy, and he was looking, and he just wanted to step out so bad. Like he even though Jesus was warning him, not yet, now's not the time, he wanted to step out. And so he stepped out, and then it's like when he stepped out on the water, I stepped into his body, and immediately I sunk, and the current was just taking me so fast, like, I mean, just throwing my body around. And then I saw a giant shark coming, and I knew the shark was going to devour me. And, you know, obviously in the dream, I'm just kind of like, you know, my heart is racing. I'm like, oh my goodness, look at this shark. And I have no control. I was getting thrown everywhere. And then I washed up on the shore. And when I washed up on the shore, I was in a military uniform, and I began to just preach to all these people. They were like kind of like, I don't know, like zombies. And I knew while I was preaching that they should have a military uniform on. Okay, but they didn't. They weren't listening. I'm like, man, there's a war going on. And I was just crying tears, and I was warning them. I said, man, you got to get ready. And there's people that we left on the battlefield, and horrible things are happening, and they need reinforcements, and they're tired. And I mean, I was preaching, and something in my spirit knew, like I was telling them, like, it's the end times, get ready. And I took my hat off because I was so frustrated. It was like the people just weren't listening. They didn't want to hear what I was saying. It was kind of like they were just blocking me out. Even though I had the military uniform and there's blood on it, it was clear that I'd been in a war. It's like they didn't want to believe that there was a war going on. And then I kind of somehow ended up like back hovering over the water, and I went on a slave ship. And this part was so violent and uncomfortable. It was like an old slave ship when they were bringing the African Americans, you know, on the boat, and they were all chained up. And so I'm walking through the slave ship, and I see these guys mocking and placing bets, like who is gonna die first. And I saw like many of the slaves had the you know, the chain around their neck, and then, you know, around their wrist, and they began to choke. And it was like they were tightening the chain around their neck, and they were shaking so violently, like they couldn't breathe. And it was horrible. Like they were struggling to breathe, and they were dying, and people were placing bets, like, you know, who is gonna die first. And it was so disgusting. And then it's like I went to another part of the ship, and there was a guy, like, you know, I think you call it a guillotine, something like that. He was like, his hands were in it, and he didn't have no chains, but his hands were through it, and his head was through it. But he was like smiling, telling a story, and it was a paper. Like it wasn't made of wood or anything. It was literally just a big piece of paper, and there was like a house that was drawn on the piece of paper, and he's smiling, and there's these two, like, you know, real lusty type of woman next to him, and he's just like, he's just talking about the abuse that happened to him, and he's like so happy to be telling, you know, what is happening to him. And they're just, you know, smiling, and they're like, and he's just enjoying himself, right? And then somehow I ended up inside of the this, I don't know, like an office place, and I saw this guy was slumped over in a wheelchair, and he was like connected to some machine. And there was somebody, I couldn't see who it was. They were moving this knob like up and down. And when they moved it down, the guy's heart like started beating like slower and slower. And then he was like slumped over, and he was sitting in a wheelchair. And it was like the person was controlling him through his heart. And so like the more like the guy was controlling the heart of the female, I just saw the hand. It was like that person was just paralyzed by what the other person was doing, right? And then from there, I'm almost done. I was in a junkyard, and it was like this guy he had like a prison uniform on, right? And it was like he escaped, but he was like, the junkyard was right outside of the prison. You know, like, I don't know how to explain it. The junkyard where they crush cars and stuff like that. There was like all these crushed cars everywhere, cars that had been in accidents. And then this girl comes, and like, she's like, you know, kind of scantily dressed. And they kind of like get in the back seat. And I could tell like, okay, you know, something is going on there. And once he gets out of the car, it's like the people knew that he escaped from the prison. They caught him in the junkyard. Like the lights came on, like, oh, we found him. Let's arrest him. Let's take him back to prison. Right. And so obviously with the slave ship and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, the different things that I was seeing, it was very graphic. And I just woke up and I was like, man, okay, God, what did that mean? And I know that sounds like a whole bunch of just random stuff, but watch this. This is what the Lord gave me. All right. Number one, when the guy stepped off, all right, into the water, and Jesus was like, wait. And then he jumped in the current. You know, Psalms 23 says he leads me to the green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. When you jump in too early and God has been trying to tell you to wait, and you do your own thing because, you know, you're tired of waiting, you jump in waters that are too fast for you. You can almost self-destruct. And the current was so fast, I couldn't even control it. And then a shark, which represented Satan, was coming to devour us. So very shortly with that one, sometimes we jump into situations and it's just throwing us all over the place, and the enemy is just looking to devour us. And if we had just waited on God, we would save us some heartbreak. You know, you can apply that to relationships or anything else. And so we get ourselves in a situation, you know, where we're bound and we're in trouble because we just didn't listen. All right, now that one was pretty easy, but here's where these other ones really blew my mind, right? So the slave ship. The Lord was showing me that some people were in bondage, not by choice, right? You've got generational curses. You've got all kinds of things that, you know, when the disciples asked, they said, who sinned? You know, that this man was sick and he needed healing. Some things in our life we just need deliverance from. It's not because we did anything. It could be, you know, generational curses. It could be just different life circumstances and situations. We were born into certain situations and we just need deliverance. And if we don't get deliverance, all right, it's going to kill us. It's going to take the life out of us. He came so that we can have a life and life more abundantly, right? But if we don't get the help that we need, if we don't get the deliverance that we need, all right, those chains are going to kill us. It's going to kill our future. It's going to kill our destiny. It's going to kill everything that God has for us. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't know why we're bound. We just feel like, man, you know, I know something is wrong. I've got certain issues. I can't be the husband that I want to be or the wife that I want to be or whatever it is. And God is saying, man, seek me so that I can give you the deliverance that you need. All right. And pray and ask me, are there any areas that I've got strongholds and things? And don't blame yourself and have a, you know, pity party and condemn yourself, because some of these things were bound and it wasn't our choice. And here's probably the biggest part of the dream that I was just like, whoa. The guy who was in like the paper guillotine on the other side of the ship, the Lord showed me he could have broke out at any time. And the reason there was a house that was drawn on the paper was because he had built a house out of his dysfunction, out of his wounds. And he liked the attention that being hurt got him. So when the ladies were sitting there and they represented like lust, he was fulfilling his own lust. So through my abuse and through my hurt, I don't want healing. I could break out from this at any time because it's just paper. It doesn't have no real power over me. But I built a house because guess what? If I was healed, all right, now I'm going to lose the attention and the affection and things that I'm getting. Now maybe that I don't have certain excuses anymore for why I can't do this and why I can't do that. And so that right there just blew my mind. Like, he could break free whenever he wanted, but he didn't want deliverance and he didn't want freedom. You got to realize that. And then the junkyard, the guy was free and liberated, but then he got involved with that female. You're in a junkyard relationship. You're in a junkyard place. You're in a bad situation that you got no business being. God has freed you and you can have better, but you want to stay in the junkyard. And because of that, now you get caught up in some things and the enemy is coming against you. You're in a relationship that you have no business being in, a situation that you have no business being in. And God gave you liberty, but what did you do with it? You stayed in the junkyard and then you got caught up again. Just think about that. We have freedom in Christ. And there's all kinds of different bondage from past, from sins, from shame, from mistake. But we have total freedom and liberty through Christ, and we can get it. Be encouraged and think about that today in Jesus' name.